Hello and welcome back to the Patient First podcast. I'm glad you're here. It's a wacky world right now, right? And today we're going to handle one of the biggest issues that dental practices across the country are talking about. And we've talked about it before. It's a bit of a focus right here because the Patient First podcast, I really want to bring you timely information, key dental indicators, books that help you at this moment in time, which we have a really great one coming up, and also attacking the burning issues that are going on in dentistry right now, or giving you tips on how you can shift your mindset a little bit to put the patient first, which is in fact helping you be more profitable, right? We haven't really touched basis on the concept of patient first in a while. It's the theme of my book, The Patient First Manifesto. If you don't have a copy, get your free copy around this podcast, or go to upgradedental.com where you can get your free copy. But it's really about delivering dentistry from the patient's perspective in order to grow your practice. And it sounds simplistic, but we have been ignoring the way patients view dentistry for quite a long time. And not knowingly, that's what the book is about, the source of why we have this, what I call the great disconnect between dental professionals and dental patients, and how we can bridge that gap, and really how that is the key to not just growing your practice, but elevating care, expanding the number of people that we see. But I digress. That's not what this podcast is about, but I wanted to kind of touch base a little bit on the patient first theme because it's core to everything that I'm working on right now. And you'll see that theme coming forward in the Patient First podcast, which I've got to say thank you. I mean, we're getting 3,000 downloads a week now of this podcast. And last year, if we would have had a podcast that got 200 downloads, I would have been shocked. So this kind of new format, the new theme has really been resonating. So thank you for all the listeners. Please subscribe, like, comment. And today we have a big topic that's near and dear to my heart based on some things that are kind of red hot in my face right now and likely for you too. I'm talking about team members. Not just team members, but the leaders in your practice. Anybody that has anybody reporting them to, anybody that's managing anybody in any sort of way, which in most dental practices is almost everybody. Because there are some things, some character traits that we have to look for and specifically look out for. And I've had this hit me hard. You know, if you learn the most from your mistakes or your failures, I have learned some big lessons, even as recently as last week, that I'm bringing to you today. So, and there's some ones that have been so painful that you learn them hard, right? And that's what this first character trait that I'm going to talk about is about. It is what I've been a couple times, not many, but very hard. And I want to preface this by saying the reason why I'm talking about this right now, because there might be the team members might know and they might be watching, right? But the reason why this came up is I did an interview for Abby with Abby Fry, who was an assistant that I worked closely with for about a dozen years, that now leads a DSO's training for all of their hundreds of dental assistants, maybe thousands. Phenomenal person and a great leader. I learned the art of delegation by working with her, and she learned the art of leadership and management working when we were working together. She was elevated from a team member into a position of authority, and she's actually doing a course for Upgrade Dental for if you are elevating a team member from a peer group to be a leader, how to do that successfully. It's a great course so that's coming soon from Upgrade Dental. It's probably actually available now based on the time recording this podcast, but she's phenomenal. And when I was talking with her, I was just struck because we haven't worked closely together for a few years. And I was just struck with how great of a leader she is and how some of the people that I put in the position of power, in the position of authority, not power, because even if you do delegate something, you should remain in control if it's your business. But in the position of authority, and I've realized one big takeaway from that, and it's leading me to the very first characteristic trait that you should look out for in leadership, and it's a shocking one. It's one like I like to talk about in this podcast. I like to pull back the curtain on things that you might think are great, but then you dig deeper and you go, oh, there's some problems here. And that's what I'm talking about. And again, this is not for looking for somebody who is a great dental assistant or a great hygienist. Okay. That you know those skills and can track those, I'm sure. And obviously you have those in your practice. But what I'm talking about is anybody who's listening today, including myself, reinforcing to myself the traits that you really have to be careful of and the one that you really want to look for. And the number one trait that you have to be careful of, And again, this is speaking from hard-earned experience that it's shocking to think about. But the first trait that you really want to be careful of when you take somebody who's a great hygienist, great assistant, maybe great at the business office, and then you elevate them to office manager, clinic leader, lead hygienist, whatever it is, the first thing you have to be careful of and wary of is high performance. That sounds weird, right? It sounds weird. Why do you have to be careful of high performance? And again, to be clear, high performance is not a negative attribute in a leader or in a manager. It's just something to watch carefully when you elevate that person into a leadership or management position, because high performers can fall into a couple categories. They can be like Abby, who are amazing leaders, amazing managers. And I'll talk about kind of why I think the difference is between the Abbeys of the world and the people you have to be careful of. But every once in a while, and I would say 1 in 10, and it's impossible. This is from my mentor Darren Hardy when I went to his course, and he really taught me the lesson that this leads to is you can't look at yourself in the mirror and say, well, how did I make this mistake? Because when you take a high performer and you elevate them, it makes all the sense in the world. However, I think it's 1 in 10. I don't have any statistics. That's just been my experience. But it's a fraction of the high performers that will lead to this next characteristic that you have to watch out for, and that is entitlement. High performers, when elevated to a position of authority, can get the disease of entitlement. And we all know what that looks like because they're so good at their job. And then they're probably actually somewhat effective at managing people, probably very bad at leading people because nobody wants to follow somebody that's entitled for the most part. But they might be very confident, so maybe they will get some people. But that entitlement is a challenge. It's one of the biggest challenges I've ever dealt with in my career. Having a high performer who's an A player who does amazing work, but then can't work with other people because they're entitled, or they feel like they've contributed way more to the team than they have. And let me tell you an example of this. This is the speaker on the lecture circuit that ran a dental practice, meaning was the office manager at a dental practice with a single dentist that did fairly well and thought that that practice's success was solely up to him or her. So now I should go distribute my my information from the podium, right? That is, in my mind, is a sense of entitlement. That person has a small subset of knowledge, has never really owned or run a large dental practice. There are those out there too. And so I'm not casting stones at everybody. I'm just saying that if you're running the business systems of a dental practice that's successful, you are a key piece of a broader mission, right? If you own the dental practice, you are a key piece of the broader mission. Tom Brady's great, but if you don't have the other players and the coaches, he doesn't win the Super Bowl, right? That's a reference that I only know because of my son Miles. But entitlement is a problem, and it shows up from, typically speaking, high performers that you elevate into a position of leadership, and you work closely with, and then you can see this grow like a weed in your organization. And I frankly didn't know what to do about it. I felt guilty, like I had overextended myself, heap too much praise on team members, given them too much uh, ownership of things, until I went to a session with Darren Hardy, and he said, you can't see these weeds. They just grow. And there's only one thing to do is to rip them out at the root. You have to get rid of the cancer of entitlement as soon as it pops up in your organization. And that was great solace to me because I didn't want to stop leading or managing the way I was doing things. And I also wanted to take high performers and continue to elevate them and give them opportunities to grow. Because I think that's how a great organization is fueled. But I have this issue pop up every once in a while. And now I know what to do about it. I know just to cut it out as soon as it appears. I came back, told everybody on every one of my teams, and I said that. I said, we have had this issue of entitlement. Nobody here is experiencing that. So I don't want, but I came back from this meeting and I realized that I had failed all of you by allowing entitlement to grow like a weed in our organization. And I won't allow that to happen ever again. So if I'm entitled, please come tell me, and I will remove myself from whatever thing I'm feeling entitled about as much as I can, because entitlement needs to be cut out. Now, maybe you have somebody on your team that's entitled, who's a high performer. And I fully understand that it's very hard to cut them out because you rely on them. And I've painted myself in that corner, unfortunately, more than once. And it is a difficult thing to do, but I can tell you 100% honestly that I wish I had cut it out, ripped it out at the root when it showed up. So hopefully that's encouragement, or at least you have a pathway ahead for what you need to do if you're experiencing that. And if you do, I have all the empathy in the world for you, because that has been in my most recent business experiences. It's been probably the biggest source of what I would say things that I've failed my team on. And the biggest thing I failed my teams on is not cutting out entitlement from high performers when it shows up. So, a little bit of an experience share on the negative side. So, on the positive side, a phenomenal team member of ours over here at Upgrade Dental, Nate, who I've talked about before, he interviewed somebody that's coming on to our team. And I asked him, one thing I did right this time was I had Nate talk with this new team member without me. When we touched base and I said, "Hey, what did you think, Nate?" He said something that I thought was great. He said, "Well, I liked him because he's a lifetime learner." And so looking for the characteristic of somebody who is learning, again, this is not necessarily for somebody that's doing operational excellence like hygiene or even a dentist or but somebody who you're looking to lead and manage other people. I think for them to be an excellent, not great, but an excellent leader or manager, they have to be a lifetime learner, because it's an open mindedness, a willingness to want to incrementally improve that I think is required to sort of have that. It's sort of the antithesis, if you will, of entitlement. If you're a lifetime learner, you're really admitting to the world that I don't know everything. I want to seek out more information so I can become better. And that's kind of the opposite. And I didn't even think about that leading into this podcast, but now I'm seeing that as I'm talking, that learning is really the antithesis of entitlement. And so I asked Nate, I said, "Well, how did you even get that?" And he said, "Well, I've got little tricks, but one is I ask them what's the latest book they read. And if they say Harry Potter, I say, well, that's a non-answer, because Harry Potter isn't necessarily a lifetime learner, and they could have read that when they were 9. It's hard to believe that Harry Potter came out that long ago, but it's true. So looking for somebody who not just is looking to be an excellent operator. So if you say, "What's the latest book you read?" and they said, "The Principles of Scaling Calculus 101," I mean, that's great, right? But digging deeper to see if they're learning about things outside of their core skill sets. So if they're reading about philosophy or history, it doesn't matter. If they want to learn, I believe that's somebody that you can probably be assured that maybe there's at least less likely to be entitled. And so, the reason why I'm bringing these two traits up today, A, is because they're very sort of red hot in my life, and they focus, and it might be in yours too, because there's a lot of team member change going on right now. And as you're bringing on new team members to lead, or you're elevating from your current team members to moving them into a leadership position, take Abby's course at upgradedental.com. But also, uh, make sure that you look for people that have that learning desire that's baked into them outside of the practice, in the practice. They are just lifelong learners. And if they are a high performer, make sure that you watch out for entitlement. And I would put people on notice and say, we don't, if I'm exhibiting that, let me know. And if it happens in this organization, there's only one good way to get rid of it, and that is to cut it out. And so, just to let you know, entitlement is what is the definition of entitlement from my perspective without kind of stream of consciousness right now? I would really say it's over elevating your position to the point where you think your contributions are way more important than everybody else's, and you deserve more than everybody else, right? And what that shows up as is being more self-focused, not us focused. It's the basketball player that doesn't pass the ball. The problem is, if you're Michael Jordan, you don't pass, right? It's hard to cut them off the team. But on a team in business, it what that does is it just demotivates, and you lose all the other people around them. And so you have to be the coach that has to either pull the player aside and say, "Hey, you have to pass the ball when it makes sense, or else cut them off the team." And I promise you, it is definitely worth it. So hopefully that's been helpful. And I know that it is a tough time in dentistry when it comes to team members. And so assembling great leaders, I think, will help you assemble a great team. I know that there's a minimal amount of team members in dentistry right now, so everybody's struggling. But as I've talked before about on the podcast, 74% of people are looking to change positions right now. So if you get this right, if you get the good leaders in place, you can still have the team of your dreams. In fact, it might be the best time to assemble a new team, a fresh team, to reach new levels. And so thank you very much for showing up to the Patient First podcast, and I look forward to talking with you next week.